Everybody to GoLocal Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. This guy is the former mayor of Cranston and the Republican candidate, in all likelihood, for the 2nd Congressional District in the state of Rhode Island. Allan Fung, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Josh. Nice to be back in person.
Yeah, it's nice to see you. So listen, we've known each other for a long time. You've run big races. What's the issue that you're hearing from people as you go around the state talking to people about running for the first really open congressional seat since 2010? This is the first time it's been a jump ball.
Yeah, 22 years that Congressman Langevin served in the seat, but the number one issue I hear at the doors, at events, talking to business owners is the economy. People are getting hit in their pockets, their pocketbooks, their wallets because of a lot of the policies coming out of Washington, D.C., but most importantly, gas, groceries, milk prices, the fact that even mothers can't get baby formula is definitely something that's on our mind. And for our ocean state, we're seeing the brunt of it now because our hospitality industry, which we rely upon during the summer, Josh, as everyone knows, when it's tough to get tables, when service is lagging, and and this is just a byproduct of the labor shortages that we're encountering. So it's impacting us at every single level. But I would probably say gas and grocery prices are the number one issues that I've heard about principally on that campaign trail, and we have to turn things around. That's why I'm running. A lot of the issues that are going on is the similar issues that I tackled when I first jumped into office in Cranston. When we're like out of control spending that happened in Cranston, similar that's going on is causing this inflation. When we see gas prices that are spiking up to, whether it's $4 or $5 a gallon, people are paying $60, $70, up to $100 per week for gasoline if they're filling up just once. This is what is on, and I want to get down there, cut spending like what we did in Cranston, make sure we become energy independent to drive a lot of these energy prices down.
Dan McKee sent me a press release, I think he just sent it to me, I'm not sure, that we have the lowest unemployment in the state of Rhode Island in 49 years. Isn't that on the plus side?
Here's the problem with all that. When inflation is rocketing up over 9%, the cost, people can't keep up with this cost of living crisis. Let's call it what it is, a cost of living crisis, because like I said, when you're filling up the tank, if you're fortunate to only fill it up once, and it's $60, $70, up to $100, depending on the type of vehicle you have, that's ridiculous. That's a lot of those dollars getting siphoned out of your pocket. Grocery prices are out of control, and if you can afford to take your family out to eat, these bills are almost doubled because of these added costs. You're not keeping up with a lot of this stuff. It's more than just about people back to work. We don't have enough people in the workforce now as it is. This is all a byproduct of what's going on in Washington, D.C., and why I want to change things.
Are we in a recession? Because I'd always heard that 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth was a recession.
Right.
And then we had 2 consecutive growths of negative growth, and the White House redefined the definition of a recession. So are we in a recession or not in a recession? I want to be politically correct.
Yeah,
are we
sure.
in a recession or not in a
Look,
recession?
I'll leave that for the economics, the pundits, and everyone to call it. I can tell you what we are in. We're in a crisis right now, and that's why I'm running for this office, because I know I've got the policies that can really impact and drive a lot of these costs down. I want to focus on bringing back targeted investments to help support our business base here. Our green economy, our burgeoning blue economy, bring back some of the research dollars to URI to support that blue economy that they're trying to build up in this ocean state. I want to make sure that we're cutting spending. Josh, $200 million for Nancy Pelosi's Presidio Park project, that's some of the pork that I want to cut out of these budgets and be laser focused on our spending.
But is her Presidio and your blue economy, is it the perspective of whose project it is and whose state's economy it is?
I can tell you one thing, Josh, one brings jobs, one's bringing jobs back to the ocean state, one's a pet project. I want to support targeted investment dollars. When I bring them in, I want to bring them into Quonset to support what's going up and down that Narragansett Bay, the burgeoning economy. I've met with some of the green companies that are here that are staging at Quonset, staging down in Providence Port, staging hopefully in East Providence and expanding beyond. a lot of the companies that are importing, exporting, through those channels. That's why I want to bring back some of the dollar support. The great ventures going on at Quonset in other areas too, because let's face it, Josh, we're in New England, old infrastructure. We got to bring dollars back to support, clean water, sewer systems, other upgrades that municipalities in a state really need, that our residents deserve.
Allan, Nancy Pelosi went to Taiwan. Former President Trump was tough on China. This might be the only overlapping issue in which Nancy Pelosi and Donald Trump have a similar point of view. Was that a good trip? Was that a good message to send to mainland China? And does it risk our national security, as some in the White House had warned her about?
Well, this is something that's personal to me because, being of Chinese descent, my parents were both born in mainland China, came to the United States through Hong Kong, where they met, got married, and came to live the American dream. I've been to all three locations, from mainland China, where my parents grew up, to even Beijing, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. Yes, I've been part of that delegation, led a delegation to Taiwan to see and have discussions with former President Ma, who used to be there, about the relations, the critical relationships that the U.S. must have with Taiwan. We're supporting a lot of their military defense, which I am avidly supportive of, because we have to support a lot of our allies that are democratic leaning. And most importantly, what I want to say about Nancy Pelosi's trip is this. She's taking a lot of risk with that delicate relationship between China, Taiwan, and the United States. I am one of those individuals that would be supportive of Taiwan, short of providing troops on the ground. But sometimes poking a bear in the eye isn't the right message to be sending for political purposes on the eve of elections, when I think that's what she's trying to do.
Well, let's talk about the bear. The bear has civil rights violations.
Absolutely.
They imprison their own population. They steal our technology.
Yep.
They're not our strongest ally. They've been supporting Russia's invasion into Ukraine.
Yeah.
We don't seem to get very far being the good diplomatic partner. Is she right, and was Donald Trump right, that maybe a much more aggressive American stand against China is the only way to gain their respect and to bring them to the table?
I don't mind being strong with China and bringing up a lot of these issues that you just raised, because they're all very valid issues, including environmental issues that are going on over there. We have to take a strong stand to protect the environment, protect our IP that's being taken from many of our companies that are trying to do business over there. There has to be equal footing and partnerships with anyone doing business with China. Yes, we should take a stronger stand, but sometimes, in this environment, what's going on right now, you should send a message, but I'm not sure that the visit by Nancy Pelosi was the right message, because I saw it more as a political type trip rather than something that would lead to something more productive to try to provide a more reasonable solution to what's going on between China and Taiwan.
Should Donald Trump run for president in 2024?
I'm looking for a fresh face to represent that Republican Party. Someone like myself who can...
Is this a presidential announcement?
Don't start that, Josh. No, I'm running for Congress, and I'm focused on this election because of all the reasons that I mentioned. But the bottom line is this. I want someone that's focused on driving down this inflationary cost, making sure that our supply chains are back in order, making sure people are getting back to work. That's who I'm looking to represent the party. And that's why I'm running to get down to Washington, D.C. I want someone like myself.
Should Joe Biden run for re-election?
Definitely not, because that's what a great follow-up, because to be honest, we even saw in that Boston Globe poll, in our race, by the way, for all you listeners out there, I am leading in this race, not taking advantage of it, but most importantly, that poll showed that there's a lot of dissatisfaction amongst all Rhode Islanders. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, all alike, with the job approval, not just what's going on down in Washington, D.C. We have to make a change with what's going on, because I think many people have been misled by the policies that's going on. We're paying for it at the gas pumps and the grocery stores. That's why I want to get down to fix these problems, just like what I fixed Cranston. I've got the right skill sets to lead down there in the way I did in Cranston, working across the aisle, bringing common sense solutions and leadership to the table.
Is the January 6th Commission, that committee's work, has that been positive to resolving this issue? Are you supportive of the actions that that committee's been taking?
No, I think we've seen a lot of compelling testimony coming out of that January 6th Commission. What I'd like to see come out of it is, basically, as a former prosecutor, I understand process, investigation. What I really want to see is we got to get to the bottom. What happened on that day? Learn from, those gaps, especially those security gaps that happened where our law enforcement was attacked and injured.
Is that even plausible that the Secret Service has misplaced, deleted? I mean, it's 2022. Is this even possible that these text messages?
I don't know, Josh. I'm not an IT guy, so who knows?
You're a former prosecutor.
Yes.
And if you were prosecuting a case that involved the Rhode Island State Police, hypothetically, and they said, oh, by the way, all our records for for this day of the raid on the Indian tobacco, you would have been like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, but you know what I'd also do as a former prosecutor? Look, and there's a process, and I trust, the career professionals at the Justice Department, because they are doing their homework right now.
Yeah.
We've already seen 700 plus people that have been brought up on charges. They're going through that process. They're doing their due diligence. And as a former prosecutor, if I were in that case, I'd be issuing subpoenas to verify that and, see what I can obtain as part of that investigation. And while January 6th Commission's going on, I'm sure the DOJ and those career professionals are doing whatever their part to make that analysis. But the focus that I've been hearing, it hasn't been on January 6th, Josh, and I'm being all honest, because I've been from Cranston, Warwick, Coventry, just yesterday to different areas. People really are focused on the economy. That's what I'm talking about, the solutions I want to bring to the table. They're not focused on the past, they're focused on what's going on to them right now.
Talk a little bit about gun control. Congress passed legislation. Would you have voted for it?
Yeah, that bipartisan legislation, I would have supported it, and here's why. Because it would have provided a balance to protect law-abiding citizens and their access to firearms. But what was critical about, and this hits with what I've done in Cranston too, because public safety, as you know, Josh, you see my 12-year career, I always took public safety, especially with our kids, very seriously. It provided dollars for mental health initiatives, but it also provided dollars for school safety and resource officers or whatever type of program that many cities or towns or states wanted to provide to protect their kids.
David Cicilline had a bill, was approved by the House last week, to ban assault rifles. John Chafee was in favor of banning assault rifles. Would you have voted for a bill, if you were serving the House now, that banned assault rifles?
No, I would not support a bill that bans firearms from law-abiding citizens.
No,
I would not.
Or buts.
Yeah.
Jump over to the issue of Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court made a decision. It got leaked out months earlier, and then the final decision came about 6-8 weeks ago. Time in the news business becomes a blurry thing. Were you supportive of the decision by the Supreme Court?
Well, here's the thing. The decision by the Supreme Court really, kicks the decision back to the states. And in Rhode Island, back in 2019, when they passed that law, a woman's right to make that, decision.
To de facto affirm.
Right. Codifies it. So, many of the people in Rhode Island, many of the women are protected through that 2019 decision. But I just want to expand on where I stand on this, because I get, sometimes this question comes up because unlike what, the Democrats want to say, and it's about this. No, look, here's where I stand on this, and I want to make this clear. I'm not on the extremes on this issue. I'm not where Jen Psaki and the Democrats are saying abortion up to the last day, because I don't support late-term abortions unless it's for the life of the mother, rape, or incest. I would protect the ability for a woman to make that decision. I'm not on the other end of the spectrum either, where it's like ban everything, criminalize it, but having early access to the decision within guidelines, similar to what your standards would be. I won't support taxpayer-funded abortion, but like I said, a lot of those rights are already codified in Rhode Island law.
And should the Rhode Island law be the country's law?
No, I'm not going to do anything to exchange it or, move away from that Dobbs decision, which kicks it within the states, because I am more of a states' rights person.
Of the last few months, if you go to serve in the delegation, Sheldon Whitehouse and David Cicilline have been incredibly critical of the Supreme Court and have offered numerous reforms, including no longer lifetime appointments and a number of other things that kicked around the idea of expanding the court. You know, where are we with the Supreme Court, and you as a member of Congress? Is this getting out of whack? You know, the population, the American people have little trust in Congress, they have little trust in the presidency, and really for the first time you're seeing a degradation of their trust in the Supreme Court. How do we restore these things?
Well, one thing that I don't support, you know, I know Congressman Cicilline talked about stacking the court, adding more numbers. That's not something I'd be supportive of, because I don't believe in gaming the process, gaming the system to achieve the result that you want. Because then if it happens on the other end, it just starts opening up doors back way. That's not how I've operated in Cranston, anywhere else during my professional career.
You never stacked the city council in Cranston when you had a losing.
We've always had 9 members, you know, and it's the election process, whether, you know, you like it or not. There's an electoral process that happens, whether it's every 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, depending on what, you know, office you're running in. That's where voters can have a say at the ballot box. I'm not a stacking person, but I can tell you one thing. You mentioned, you know, length of time in Congress. I am a supporter of term limits in Congress. This is part of the reason why I'm no longer mayor after 12 years, which, by the way, I loved during that time of public service, did a lot of great things. But term limits are good to have new blood sometimes, you know, in new ideas, especially as you're changing as a city or town, as a state, as a country as a whole.
Okay, listen, what are you going to get tagged with after the Democratic primary? Whoever comes out of that Democratic primary is going to say, Allan Fung's a nice guy, but a vote for Allan Fung is a vote for extremist right-wing policies. You know, they did it to Link Chafee in 2004. How do you respond to that attack?
You know, and that's what I love, because everyone can't deny that I'm a nice guy. And here's where I can point to. 12 years as mayor, 12 years of proud service that I've had serving the people of Cranston. When have you ever seen me take these extreme positions? You know, my record has always been, Josh, working across the aisle. Democrats, I've worked with Democratic majorities, Republican majorities, and, you know, bottom line is this. You do what's right for people. And that's the type of attitude and approach I want to take down to Washington, D.C. You know, being thoughtful on any issue that comes across from me, hearing all sides, and trying to work together. I want to be part of that problem solvers type caucus where we're working bipartisan across the table to try to achieve things, most importantly, for Rhode Islanders.
So I worked in Washington, and I had the pleasure of working for George Mitchell, a Democrat, and then I worked for John Chafee for a much longer period of time. And when there was a Republican president in office, it was Ronald Reagan and then George Herbert Walker Bush. It was incredibly valuable for Rhode Island to have a Republican in the delegation to be able to get things done. You know, is that discussion been lost, that if Joe Biden were to lose, or if he doesn't run and the Republicans capture the White House in 2024, that Rhode Island has some level of representation? Because when a Republican's in, we don't do so well with 4 members of the congressional delegation.
You hit the nail right on the head, and this is coming, ladies and gentlemen, from someone who with the voice of experience down in Washington, D.C. And it's important to have a balance, and that's what I want to be down in Washington, D.C. Because newsflash, everyone, it looks like the Republican Party is probably going to take control of the House of Representatives, and you want someone on the other side, on the other party, to be a voice of what's going on in Rhode Island so that I can bring back some of those dollars in critical investments to cities and towns to help support, like I was talking about, Quonset, help support our business owners, the burgeoning manufacturing. I want to bring back many of the manufacturing jobs, and that's why I've been talking about, I would have supported that CHIPS Act. But I also want to support the great research at our flagship institution, URI, the great things that are going on, even CCRI and my alma mater, Rick. I can't leave them out, yeah. But there's a lot of great things that I can be a voice of, you know, down in Washington, D.C.
Let's talk about one other issue that I think is incredibly important. Is, you know, I think most people would say you've worked with Democrats and Republicans consistently. Can we ever get back to that era? I mean, you know, the way most bills got decided in the 80s and 90s was these moderates in the middle. It was Republican John Chafee and Democrat John Breaux from Louisiana, and they weren't far out on most issues. Listen, John Chafee was probably the most liberal member of all of Congress on the issue of gun control. He wanted to ban handguns. Didn't get too many co-sponsors in the United States Senate on that one. But for the most part, these were middle of the roads, trying to find solutions to big problems. Can we ever get back to that? Or is there just so much negative money, so much fueling the animosity of these campaigns?
Well, that's why I want to get down there, to bring back some of that moderation, bring back some of that common sense leadership that I've not only just talked about, but shown during 12 years. And we have to do that because, during my, tenure, not only just in Cranston, but on the city council, I've worked on the opposite side. You're right, Josh. Over time, it has gotten a little bit worse, probably with the advent of social media too, where you're seeing a lot more of that messaging being driven through social media. But let's take that out, because unless you start sending more people like myself down there that's willing to work across the aisle, get things done on any issue, things that are right for Rhode Island, things that are right for our country, we're always going to be on the extremes, and that's not what I've been about.
Can you work with David Cicilline, Sheldon Whitehouse, and Jack Reed for the betterment of Rhode Island? That congressional delegation that included Jim Langevin is considered to be one of the most liberal in the country. Can you work your magic to be able to move that along and to have partnerships with them, agree when you can, disagree when you...
Absolutely, and here's prime examples. On just Senator Reid alone, I've worked with him on getting an important piece of legislation passed for the Chinese American community when it dealt with some of our World War II, getting a Congressional Gold Medal, for their service. Issues like that are important to not just the Chinese people, but to our veteran community. Sheldon Whitehouse, I think many people know, I was a criminal prosecutor. Sheldon was the Attorney General. So Sheldon and I have known each other for a long time. And David and I used to be on the opposite side when I was a prosecutor. He was a criminal defense attorney. And while we went back and forth, we had that level of respect. But all three of them, including Congressman Langevin, we've worked, during my time as mayor in Cranston, bringing back some of those dollars, whether it's for safer grants for support our fire department, equipment for our police and fire, bringing back dollars, to address climate. That's another area where I'm a little different from some of the national Republicans. I'm a climate change person that believes that we need to have a responsible transition to renewables, but I've also done things in Cranston where we talked about flood mitigation. I think many people remember, I was that mayor during my first term dealing with not one, but two devastating floods. But it wasn't just the response to the flood. We didn't forget, and we made sure that we bought some of those houses in flood-prone areas, restored it back to its natural habitat so that water can flow. So these are different initiatives that I've worked with the federal delegation on already, and this is what I would bring down to Washington, D.C., working across the aisle on important things for Rhode Islanders.
Well, let me ask you this last question. In all likelihood, the way the polls point, the nominee of the Democrats who wins the primary is going to be a white man. Mm-hmm. And the Democrats historically have only nominated just about exclusively white men to serve in Congress. What would it mean for you, your family, your legacy, your family story, to be that representative of the Rhode Island, the first minority to represent the state in Congress?
Now, it would be a dream, American dream, and I wish my dad would be alive. If it happens, I hope it happens, because I think it would mean not a lot for just my family, because, I remember their story of coming over to this country, not knowing a word of English, to start a Chinese restaurant. 35 years they ran it in Cranston. I worked hard in there, but to see, be able to see their son grow up to not only serve as mayor, but hopefully do more to serve all of Rhode Island would be an honor for me and my family. But most importantly, I think what I love about the opportunity is it could kick open that bamboo ceiling, not just for Asians, but for many minorities, to be the first person of color in that delegation would be a historic, moment for many people. And one of the legacies that I'm so proud to be part of is in Cranston, being the first Asian American mayor in our state's history. Now we're seeing, just in this election cycle alone, I think 4, Asian women running for the state general assembly. Democrats, Republicans, whatever, it's nice to see that happening, especially in this day and age, more political involvement, and I hope to serve all of you down, regardless of whether you're voting for me, whatever, because I don't use identity politics. Please vote for me based upon what I believe in, and hopefully we can have a respectful dialogue back and forth.
Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time. Stay right here for 1 second.
Sure.
For everybody else, stay tuned. If you haven't seen the story, Mitchell Garabedian, the famous attorney who had pressed forward on the prosecution of the Diocese of Boston on sexual abuse cases, have weighed in on the story GoLocal broke on Monday relative to a priest being shuffled from 2 churches, Cranston and Barrington. Now he has reemerged down in Narragansett, and he says Bishop Tobin should be calling the police to do an investigation. Read up on that. We have much, much more going on. Thanks so much. Stay safe. Enjoy this great weather. Stay right here. Stay tuned for much more on GoLocal.